The latest developments in North American trade are creating significant ripples, and the consequences are appearing not in press conferences, but in grocery stores and on American household bills. The United States has signaled potential tariffs on Canadian potash, a move intended as economic leverage, but its effects are already being felt domestically. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe and leave a like to stay informed on this story. Potash, an essential component in fertilizer, is crucial for crop production across the United States. Canadian potash represents a substantial portion of the U.S. supply, with nearly 90% of imports coming from Canada in 2023. Canada's 11 operational potash mines, located entirely in Saskatchewan, produced almost 22 million tons that year, accounting for roughly one-third of global output and more than 40% of world exports. Even without official tariffs, the mere anticipation of trade restrictions caused potash prices to spike, rising from around $330 per ton in early January to $348 by late February. These price fluctuations demonstrate how sensitive agricultural supply chains are to political uncertainty. The U.S. relies heavily on imported potash because domestic production cannot match the scale or timing needed to support seasonal farming cycles. Developing new domestic sources requires years of exploration, permitting, and infrastructure construction, challenges that farmers cannot afford given the seasonal nature of their operations. Tariffs on Canadian potash, therefore, are not absorbed by Canada, but are ultimately reflected in the U.S. agricultural system. Importers pass the added costs to farmers, increasing the expense of fertilizer and, by extension, the cost of crops. For corn growers, fertilizer can account for more than 20% of production costs, meaning any sharp price increase directly impacts farm profitability. Financial support programs have already been prepared in anticipation of potential trade disruptions. A $12 billion farm relief package signals that authorities recognize the risk of economic strain on agricultural producers. Including previous support measures during past trade tensions, total relief assistance could approach $40 billion if tariffs are implemented. The interconnected nature of the North American agricultural market highlights that such tariffs are not isolated political statements. They carry real economic consequences. Farmers face rising costs, potential bankruptcies, and reduced profitability, which ultimately trickles down to consumers through higher prices for food staples like bread, meat, and vegetables. Canada's strategic advantage lies in both geology and timing. Saskatchewan's potash reserves, estimated at 1.1 billion tons, provide an irreplaceable source for global agriculture. While U.S. policymakers can threaten tariffs, Canada's concentration of operational mines and its timing relative to planting seasons give it leverage in any trade dispute. The U.S. dependence on Canadian potash is structurally entrenched. Alternative global sources, such as Russia and Belarus, have been constrained by geopolitical sanctions, leaving Canada as the primary reliable supplier. Annually, between 7 and 10 million tons of Canadian potash flow to the United States, forming a critical link in the agricultural supply chain. Canada's response has emphasized measured strategic positioning rather than headline-driven reactions. Diversifying trade routes, reinforcing relationships with European partners, and implementing domestic support programs all reflect a long-term approach to resilience. Ottawa has also prepared counter-tariff measures against U.S. exports, targeting key sectors with political weight to ensure its leverage is recognized. The ongoing potash dispute underscores a fundamental reality. Political threats may shift policy discussions, but the essential chemistry of food production cannot be replaced. Potash, along with water, fertilizer, and energy, forms the backbone of agricultural stability. Turning these critical inputs into leverage risks long-term disruption to food security and supply chains. This episode highlights the structural power of resource-rich regions. While rhetoric may dominate headlines, countries sitting on irreplaceable natural resources hold real influence over markets and livelihoods. Canada, with its abundant reserves and concentrated mining capacity, has positioned itself as a stable and dependable supplier, while the United States faces rising costs and economic pressures as a direct result of its trade stance. Moreover, the global nature of agricultural markets means that any disruption in North American potash supply can have cascading effects worldwide. Countries in Latin America, Asia, and Europe that rely on predictable fertilizer prices for crop planting could experience shortages or price spikes, increasing global food insecurity. The ripple effects extend beyond borders, highlighting the strategic importance of Canadian potash on a global scale. Farmers are particularly vulnerable because fertilizer costs directly influence planting decisions and yield outcomes. Sudden increases in input costs may lead to reduced planting of certain crops, delayed production cycles, or reliance on lower quality substitutes, ultimately affecting both domestic food supply and international trade commitments. In addition, prolonged uncertainty around tariffs can shift investment decisions in the agricultural sector. Companies may delay expansion, halt infrastructure projects, or seek alternative suppliers, creating a long-term impact on the efficiency and competitiveness of U.S. farming. These strategic decisions underscore the fragility of supply chains in critical sectors like agriculture. Finally, the potash dispute emphasizes the balance between short-term political objectives and long-term economic stability. While tariffs can be used as negotiation tools, they also introduce volatility into essential markets, affecting households, farmers, and global consumers. This situation serves as a case study in how trade policy decisions must consider both immediate and extended consequences. In summary, the potash conflict is more than a bilateral trade dispute. It is a warning about the consequences of politicizing essential resources. Short-term leverage comes at the expense of stability, and the true costs are being felt by farmers and consumers alike. Thank you for following this analysis. Remember to like and subscribe to stay updated on the latest developments affecting North American trade and agriculture.